All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. And today we're very pleased to have Professor Yi-Zhe Song from Surrey University. And he's a professor of computer vision and machine learning. And he's also the director of the SketchX Lab at the Center for Vision, Speech, and Signal Processing at the University of Surrey. He actually leads a couple of programs there. He leads the MSc in AI at Surrey, and he's a founding member of the Surrey Institute for People-Centered AI leadership team. He is an associate editor of pretty much the top journal in the field, IEEE Transactions on Pattern Analysis and Machine Intelligence, and also Frontiers in Computer Science, Computer Vision. He served as a program chair for many top conferences. He's actually very involved in organizing conferences and also in journals as well. He's very involved in journals. He served as a program chair for the BMVC conference. This is the British Machine Vision Conference, and regularly serves as an area chair for top conferences in the field. Most recently, CVPR 2022 and ECCV '22. He's also a senior member of the IEEE, a fellow of the Higher Education Academy, as well as a member of the EPSRC Review College. EPSRC is basically the National Funding Agency Research Council in the UK, for those of you who do not know about it. So again, I'm very pleased to have Dr. Song, Professor Song. He's one of the leading researchers in the field, and this is an exclusive opportunity for us to get to hear the latest in the sketching field, right? So without further ado, I'd like to leave it to Professor Song.
Thank you, Martin. That was really kind, and thanks again for the invitation. I think Martin speaks very highly of me, but then my impression of Martin is likewise. So I mean, he's done lots of great work on sketches. I mean, even before us, and then obviously we're working different side of sketch. So this really tells people that sketch is actually a larger field than what people perceive it to be. So, and then before that, Martin, I want to extend the invitation. So, you know, when you have time, you're invited to visit us at Surrey. So we have this People-Centered AI Institute. So this is, I'm sure you know CVSSP, right? CVSSP has been there for 7 years, and is funded by Professor Joseph Kittler. And then we've now just invested £5 million to establish this new center called People-Centered AI. So this is like larger than CVSSP. So CVSSP is at the core, and then we have people from different departments, different faculties contributing to this one message of people-centered, i.e. AI should benefit everybody, shouldn't be introducing any barriers, should be inclusive for all. So obviously sketching is a very key element in the research which are there. So if you have time, Martin, and then obviously yourself and then other people, you're really welcome to visit us.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be delighted to do so. And this theme is actually a very hot one. Stanford also put together a human-centered AI institute or something like that a couple of years ago. So Surrey is also very active in this area. Very exciting, really.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so without further ado, I think I should just crack on with my talk. Now, I know that Martin is an expert in this, and he probably have brainwashed you already on what sketch is. So I think my set of slides today is, two purposes. One is really to convey the rationale, I mean, the overall rationale behind the research of SketchX. And then number two is to really trigger discussions, because my understanding is this is like almost like half talk and half discussion, right? Which I think is great. Yeah. So it'll be 30-minute, rather high-level talks on really how I see sketch and then the sort of work, the key works we do on sketches, and then at the very end, I'll touch on some of the latest work we have on CVPR and IClear this year, and then open the floor to see trigger any discussions. So the title is obviously sketching into the future of AI. I know that sounds very vague and hand waving, and you might be thinking, oh, this is probably overselling things a bit, but hopefully I'll convince you that's not the case, because there's really a role of human sketches in visual AI. I think in terms of how we interact, how we understand scenes, and so on and so forth. So let's start with why sketch. Well, that's very simple, isn't it? People sketch. So people sketch from thousands of years ago to now on your phones and tablets, right? So this is a very good, very old, if you like, cave painting in one of the caves in France. And this is people call it horse and arrows. Yeah, obviously we do not know the artist, but we can, appreciate this event that people from thousands of years ago tried to record. And then it's interesting, across those thousands of years, people can still appreciate this bravery of hunters and how they were able to hunt down animals, and then how they think this is an event they want to record. And then people get the same message now. So, and then obviously now, sketching is everywhere. I mean, you can sketch with a pen or without a pen. It's on your phones, watches, your tablets, is everywhere. I think when Martin did his work, like many years ago, this wasn't the case. I think we still recall our moment of using Wacom tablets and then USB connection to a PC or a laptop, and then to be able to sketch them. But now, sketching interfaces are everywhere. So this is really a strong motivator on how and why we want to do sketch research. So, 6.6 billion, if people ask me a number, that's the number I give people. So why you don't sketch? Because there's 6.6 billion devices out there. And then they're like 33% people have smartphones, right? i.e. they can sketch. So this is the population that we can cultivate to convince that they can sketch, and then they can do things with sketch. So, and then before I go on to talk about the technical details, I really want to set out the scene. So my vision for SketchX is really about cultivating human vision via the means of sketching, and then to benefit computer vision in the long run. So let's look at what visual AI is. So the word of visual AI, the computer vision, is basically you want to mimic human vision, and then we call that computer vision. So if you decouple things, so what human vision is, if you see this fairly cute puppy, and then in our brain, this will involve, if you want to abstract this way, this is like two components. One is seeing, another one is understanding. And seeing is quite elementary in our brains, by the way. This is basically rows and cones. And then in terms of understanding, we have this superb black box, in terms of our brain. And our brains obviously been, have been evolved over millions and millions of years. So we are very good at recognizing, very elementary signals from our rows and cones. And in terms of this dog, then we want to, in our brain, we can associate a label to this dog brain. Now, in terms of computer vision, obviously, I already know this is yield condition problem, right? It's yield condition problem really because instead of seeing our human brains, we convert that in a very, very literal sense. So instead of seeing, rely on cameras, so take photos. So instead of rows and cones, we have raw pixels. And the problem with pixels, which is, I think, the problem of why I really want to advocate Sketch as as complementary data, as an important form of complementary data in computer vision nowadays, is Sketches has human information in it. So I'll touch on that a bit later. But then this, in turn, tells us why computer vision is a zero condition problem. It's because photos from, pixels from cameras, they have zero semantics. But then we have been working on solutions since like 20 or 30, 40 years ago, since the inception of computer vision, and really look, we have pixels. We know this is your condition problem. But you know what? We think machine learning is great. You know, the SVMs we had before, you know, the regressions, you know, the classifiers, and nowadays with deep learning and the transformers, everything. We always have this belief that machine learning will solve everything for us. Yeah. So yes, we have progressed a long way, but then my argument is it will always be subpar if you compare with a human brain. Right, and then that's number one. Number two is, I know that you heard the message, the news that Hinton, you know, quit Google now because he thinks that AI is going to rule the world. Yes, that's certainly true, and maybe certainly true in certain domains. But in the computer vision domain, I think the problem is far from solved. And even we're approaching the problem being solved, we have this problem of black box. So the same as your human brains, sorry, the human brains, which is a black box, we also have a black box in terms of machine learning techniques. So basically, we have zero semantics pixels and rely on a much worse black box than the human brain, and that's basically the, you know, what computer vision now. So obviously, because those pixels are, you know, zero semantics, we've always been relying on human annotations. I know there's self-supervised learning and then relevant literature, but still the latest, I mean, the best performing systems use human labels, human annotations. So where does Sketch fit in all of this then? Like I said, my version of Sketch is not really, yes, Sketch can be used for interaction, can be used for, you know, creativity, communication, but my take is Sketch data is seeing with understanding. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, once you draw a sketch, you have your subjective understanding of the visual scene already embedded into that drawing process. So after you sketch a particular scene and object, you already given it very good labels. But obviously, those labels are not your text labels. Those labels are embedded into the drawing process. And then the job of SketchX is really to understand that drawing process, to really cultivate that hidden information in the drawing process, and then really think about how that information can help us to understand how human brain works, and therefore to design better computer vision systems. So we are a long way from that, but then you know, I think somebody needs to do it. So yeah, Martin and me obviously will be doing this for a long time. So hopefully, you know, people in the audience, you might get intrigued, and then you know, you might think that you know, that Sketch is an important data form. Right. So if you don't believe me, so Henry Matisse also said the same thing. So drawing is putting line around an idea. Okay. So what artists do, this is the interesting bit. Now, if you go to art school, right, if you learn sketching from the very sort of like early days, I mean, the first few lessons, then you learn about the technique, right? You learn about how to put the pen, the angles, and then, you know, so on and so forth, you know, how to draw shades and how to, you know, sketch contours and so on and so forth. But when you developed over the years, when you become the artist, then you have particular style, right? And that style is your interpretation of the scene, and then obviously subject to your, you know, your drawing style, yeah. But then, you know, the whole idea is the line you put down. I'm an artist. When you put down a line, when we draw something, then there's an idea behind it. And then, as example, so this, you know, nice cave painting in France. So it's not just horse and arrow, isn't it? This horse and arrow is, you know, what people given in terms of, you know, a very abstract description of the content of the image. Okay, and then you can imagine this is almost like an image description task, right? But really, you know, picture sketch, you know, speaks 1,000 words. A picture, you know, sketch speaks about maybe hundreds of words. So you get the point. So there's lots of information embedded in sketches. And then obviously this is not just a horse and arrow. This is like a vivid recording of life events. And you can write like you can imagine, you know, you can you know, write maybe hundreds of words, depends on what you see. And those words obviously will be subjective. Right, so now that's the cave painting. Now if we have a sketch of a very cute puppy, so you'll see this is not just a dog. So this is a cute puppy sitting down, her tail pointing to the left, and lovely big eyes, and then drop ears. So this is exactly why Sketch is brilliant. It's because all of that information, like I said, is baked into the drawing process. And then it's up to us, Sketch researchers, to be able to cultivate that process, that's information embedded. So the logo, the motto of SketchX is really to understand how seeing can be explained by drawing, and then how the understanding can be then leveraged for computer vision and novel AI applications. So then what we want is really a complementary, I mean, I wouldn't say a fundamental shift, paradigm shift for computer vision, but definitely a path that people need to explore. At the end of that path, maybe something amazing. So that's my what my research vision is. I mean, before I retire, obviously. So now computer vision, like I said, is data with no understanding, with a very bad black box. With Sketch, what we want to transform that is to transform computer vision in terms of human-informed computer vision. Okay, human-informed computer vision. So what we want to deal with is obviously data with understanding. Now that can be a sketch, that can be other things, obviously, right? It's data with understanding. And then because of that, we hope we can have a much smarter glass box other than black box. Well, the reason is because, like I said, we can cut some insight on how human brain works, and therefore to open this black box a bit more. So we've done some work on this already, which is, I think, very interesting. Right, so let's cut to the chase. So what can you do, right? So this is a demo that we have. So obviously we can recognize your sketch. So I think this is a work back in 2015, and obviously we'll build many versions of this already. So this basic system can recognize your drawing. So this is an alarm clock. And as you draw, obviously the system predicts what the class is that the system thinks you're drawing. So in this case, this is what you can see for yourself is a pineapple. So thinking a berry, thinking a strawberry, thinking a tomato, and then pineapple. So the sketch recognition obviously is one of the very early works we did. But this is, I think, BMVC 2015 best paper. But then, it's nothing great, to be honest. And back then, deep learning just started, and we were one of the very first to apply deep learning into this sketch network. And yeah, so I'll move on to the next one. We can also retrieve photos using Sketch, and this is something that we have done with pioneered in terms of fine-grained image retrieval. And this is something we've really built up on over the years. So, and the idea is Sketch is very good for fine-grained descriptions. Yeah, and because that fine-grained description, so we can really leverage for Sketch to do very detailed intra-category retrieval other than inter-category retrieval. Because previously, during my PhD time, then Sketch basically image retrieval is always you have a data set of lots of categories, and then you want to retrieve, sort of like, dogs and cats, table, chairs. If you draw a dog, you want to get all the dog images to be retrieved first, and so on and so forth. But in this case, we're not doing that. We are only retrieving to, for example, in this case, shoes. It depends on, what you draw, then you have, the shoe that you want. So in this case, obviously you have this sort of pattern here. And then as you see here, and this is actually retrieving with all shoes in the UK. So this is being commercialized now. We're working with IKEA on this. And then we can also generate novel sketches. So this is one of the CVPR papers we had, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago. So this is about generating novel sketches. But then this is actually something we call pixel array game. So the idea is when you sketch, it's similar to Pictionary. So when you sketch, you want to compete with another human. But in this case, we'll compete with another AI. So on the left, you have the human sketch. On the right, you have the AI sketch. Obviously, AI can draw infinitely fast. So this is why we call it pixel array. So what we say is we want the AI, number of pixels that AI uses to be synchronized with the number of pixels that the human uses. And then the game just basically starts, like that. So whoever sketch gets recognized by another AI recognizer first, then wins. So there's a few interesting insights from this work, which I'll talk about later in the talk. So, and then we can also, this is one of the latest work we've done. So we have now trying to study the relationship between 2D sketches and 3D sketches to the 3D world. Now, obviously, metaverse is being abused by Facebook, but then the idea is, we want to democratize the 3D environment. So it shouldn't be just the game engine people, shouldn't be just like, Meta telling us what the 3D world should look like. We want to use sketches to make sure that everybody can scribble, a few strokes in 2D or in 3D to enable this building environment. So in this case, we have 2D sketches from different views, and then we can directly generate 3D chairs. So this is still very early work. Now I'll talk about that again very in detail later. And we can also use the 2D sketches to retrieve 3D objects. And this is still on 2D to 3D. And very recently, we've done some editing work as well. This is 3DV. This is joint work with Adobe. So the idea is you have a 3D sort of like a closet, and then but you want to edit that 3D closet. You want to change the style. You want to like change a short sleeve to long sleeve. And then the idea is you can just draw 2D sketches on it, and then based on the 2D sketch you draw, then the 3D model will respect that 2D sketch. Now, the difficulty there obviously is 2D to 3D, and also that your 2D sketch is only drawn on one view, and how you can actually enforce that 2D editing across all views. And then this is the one of the latest, like I said, this is about moving from 2D sketches to 3D sketches. So, really using your VR glasses and then just scribble in the air and then scribble on a computer on a touch screen. So as you can see, it's really interesting, isn't it? So the chairs people sketch a lot worse than the 2D versions. So the number one message here is people just can't sketch in 3D really well. So then it makes the problem even harder for 3D VR sketch to sort of like 3D shape generation or 3D shape retrieval. So this is the only data set we released a year ago, and then we're still doing some follow-up work on this. Now, and then one of the things we did is actually for retrieval. So you can see those are on the left, the core sketches. What you have is the 3D VR sketches, and then on the right you have the this immediate column after that is the ground truth, and then on the right you have the retrieved results. Now, it's not great, isn't it? So because a lot of the information in terms of structure is actually very vague in terms of 3D sketch. And also, if you look at the 3D models, then the differences are also quite minor. It's not as vivid as some of the 2D sketch to 2D image retrieval. So, and then this is a demo that we built. So you have this 3D. The idea is, like I said, everybody can use a few scribbles to build a 3D environment. In this case, we draw like a very simple chair. Yeah, you click on Save and Search, and then you have a few chairs retrieved. And the idea is you can click on one of the chairs and then place it in your room. So we are releasing this code. So if anybody wants to work on VR sketches, then get in touch. Then this actually took good year. Probably a good chunk of a year to do this VR environment. So if you want, then we can share the code as well. So good. So now you think, look, there's lots of work we've done, but then where's the science in any of those, right? So I'll pick up on a few works, and then the idea is after this we can talk on any of them. So like I said, the first work we did is this deep neural net for sketches. This is back in 2015. So I know the network architecture wasn't great. This is multi-branch, and then there's like a basic fusion in the end. So it's very elementary back then. in the eyes of deep learning now. But then a few cute things we did is, one is we realized that Sketch, you can really manipulate it, right? So Sketch, you have this stroke by stroke sort of like building block. And then what you can do is you can really invent some very interesting data augmentation techniques, right? You can remove strokes based on ordering, remove strokes based on the stroke length. Yeah, and also realize that Sketch is fairly abstract, right? So we then use this like a multi resolution idea, and then the idea is obviously when you have a lower resolution, then the Sketch is you're really encoding the higher level structures, and obviously when you have a very high resolution, well, the highest resolution here, then you're encoding a lot of the finer details. So obviously this is and then what we did is, I think for TU Berlin, they have this human benchmark, and this is the first network that actually beat that human benchmark. But nowadays, obviously, this is not great anymore. And this is our work in iClear last year, so I think it's very important as well. So because the TU Berlins and QuickDraws, those are the largest like Sketch data sets out there, so they have something called vectorized sketches. So you can really, basically everything is encoded in SVG format, and you can really figure out the segments and the strokes and the pen up and pen downs. So that's great. But then when we draw in a continuous manner, isn't it? So we then in this work build this a neural DE that models this whole trajectory using ordinary differential function. So that's very interesting. And then I think, and then we have a diffusion model based version of that as well in this year's iClear. And this is something really interesting also. This is the self-supervision method for sketches. Now, as we know, that's one of the very salient traits of Sketch is that it can be represented in terms of raster graphics, so pixels, black and white pixels, or it also can be represented as vectors, right? So stroke by stroke, and then from the first point to the next point, and so on and so forth. So we thought that'll be very good self-supervision signal, right? So we have proposed a network that does exactly that. And then we've shown that this not only works on sketches, but it works on hand drawings as well. So anything that has this pen movement, then can be, you can use this as a self-supervision training signal. And then some unique sketch traits, and this is, I think, something that's very important for sketches, is we shouldn't treat Sketch as an image. I mean, if we do that, then obviously everything I've said before becomes meaningless, right? So the very first sketch trait we explored is fine grainness. So like I said, Sketch is very expressive. So when you draw a shoe, when you draw a chair, then you have a lot more information embedded than just inputting the text shoe or chair, or even very short description of a shoe and chair. So this CVPR, I think, 2016, we proposed this very simple triplet network that can really explore the fine grainness of sketches. And then another unique trait of Sketch, but also a bottleneck of Sketch research now in terms of how it can be applied at a much larger scale, is the fact that people just don't sketch. Now, if you talk to anyone, I mean, nowadays probably be better if you're in a conference, in a talk, they say, oh, we do sketch research. Then the first response from, 80% of the people will be, oh, I cannot sketch. And that'll be the end of it, right? It's not interesting anymore. So how do we deal with that we can't sketch problem has been really the core problem we have been examining for the past probably 4 or 5 years. So one of the techniques we did is, look, why do we need people to finish their sketch in order to return a retrieved image? So how can we minimize the number of strokes but still maintaining the retrieval accuracy? Now, this is exactly what we did. I think this is CVPR 2017 or 18. So this is called on-the-fly sketch-based image retrieval. So the idea is quite simple. This is like reinforcement learning technique. So it's almost like in AlphaGo, you figure out which move give you the most reward. We say, look, which stroke should give you the most change in terms of the ranking. So if we draw a stroke and you see a huge change in ranking, then that means, I mean, that stroke is very, very important, isn't it? Yeah. So we basically used insights like that to design our revolves, and then we've been able to achieve, I think you can draw 30% on average, and then still be able to maintain the retrieval accuracy. And then another thing about sketches is everybody sketch really differently. So in this case, you have this ground truth image, and then you have some photos, but you can see some sketches. Those sketches are from the same shoe, but then from different people. You can see that dramatically different. So how can we work out this? How can we still ask the system to be able to retrieve the same shoe, but with really visually different sketches? So the answer lies in, obviously, you have to do some disentanglement, and then really you want to disentangle the style component out, and while maintaining the overall impression of the shoe, which will be used to retrieve the images. So, and then in terms of data sets, I think I'll speed up a little bit. So in terms of data sets, so what we did is, this is the first paired sketch image data set. So, there is also the sketchy, I think, which was concurrent work. So we published this in CVPR 2023, and then James Hayes, they got theirs, I think, in SIGGRAPH 2015, and they got theirs in 2015 as well. So the difference between ours and theirs is we have a lot more sketches per category. So we have 2,000 sketches of shoes. What James Hayes data set is, the sketchy data set, is a lot more categories, but per category they have like hundreds. But in this case, we have thousands. So therefore, this is a more fine-grained sketch data set. And then very recently, this is something we're very keen to push as well. So we finished the freehand scene sketch data set. I think, as Martin knows that previously all efforts that sketch related on scene sketch data sets, they were like half done, and they were using clip arts, like simple object templates, and then to align with photo templates and to generate this like semi freehand scene data sets, because some are freehand sketches and some are not. And also the problem is, even this is freehand sketches for some of the data sets, they do not really correspond to the underlying object. So it's not like one-to-one correspondence. But the most important thing, however, is we want to study scene level abstraction. So we do not really want object level abstraction, which we did for the shoes, and also James Hayes did it for their sketchy data set. But we want to see how human holistically abstract the scene. So for example, here is really interesting, right? You have the zebras and you have the grass field. So look, in the image, we have lots of grainness here, and then obviously you see this is grass. But when we draw a sketch, as you can see, just a few strokes, isn't it, to denote grass. But then when I show this sketch to you, you can easily tell me, look, this is like two zebras, sort of eating grass or something on grass field. So this is really interesting. So that scene level, abstraction is something that we will explore in this, something that our lab will explore of this data set. And then, like I said already, so this 3D VR sketch data set is also, hopefully, if you want to work with 3D, and if you have some plans in terms of AR and VR, so this will come really handy. So this annotation obviously is a lot harder. So the scale of this data set, I think, is only have probably 1,000 3D VR sketches of chairs. So because obviously in this collected data set, you need people to come in, get VR glasses on, want to train them a bit so that they know how to use the VR headset. But other than that, after people are accustomed to using VR headsets, actually asking them to sketch is not that hard. But the problem, like I said before, is the sketches are really not very of high fidelity. So, and then the very, very ultimate vision in terms of applying sketch, obviously, is a few years later, we have the Google, we're on the Google page, that you have this actual pen icon. And you see this? Yeah. So obviously you can retrieve using text, speech, images, and also by how you draw. And then this is like Mark Zuckerberg in sort of like selling the metaverse story. And obviously the idea is, hopefully, I mean, not a pen, but hopefully, there will be some sketching element involved. Like I said, you can easily, scribble in the air, and you can freely, construct a 3D environment and then retrieve objects. So I'll very briefly talk about some of the latest works we have. So this is our works in CVPR and then IClear this year. So, and then the first work, which I like the most, is this rough sketch to photorealism. So the idea is, I mean, I'm sure that everybody's aware of Pix to FitPix and then all those cross-model, GAN works. So that's all great. But the problem is when people say they work with sketches, they don't really mean it. So the GAN community thinks sketches as edge maps. Now we have edge maps. Obviously, everything's great, right? Because the geometric structure and the pixel alignment is great. So you can just rely on edge maps and give you very photorealistic results. But then us sketch people, we know that sketches are very rough. So how do we bridge this gap between very badly drawn sketches to photorealistic results? So our solution is actually very neat. So what we did is, let's not go directly from a sketch of shoe, to the photo, because if we do that, we know the photo will somehow resemble the badly drawn sketch, therefore it's not great. So what we did is we map the sketch encoding to the latent space of style GAN. And then because the style GAN is fixed, so we, every time an output, it generates a photorealistic shoe, will have to be photorealistic, because that's what style GAN does. So the key basically lies in how you map the sketch to the latent space of style GAN. And then the second work is on SketchX AI, so sketch explainability. So this is something that's is really the first work on this. Now, what we did is to introduce sort of like a process called sketch inversion. What sketch inversion is, so we have a sketch, so of something, let's say here a bicycle. So instead of like having a bicycle sketch, and then we use very image-driven, sort of like saliency-based saliency map techniques to see where are the important bits. That's not sketch. That's not particularly designed for sketch, right? The thing about sketch is sketch is made of strokes, and each stroke has a order, has a location, right? So what we did is we train a network where then we collapse all the strokes so that it's centered on the origin, right? And then we ask a learned sketch encoder to shift those strokes to certain locations, and then the end, the outcome is obviously we want this shifted strokes to resemble the object back. Now the idea is obviously if your trained encoder can do that, then that means it has some understanding of the sketch, isn't it? So it knows this circle, and then should represent tires, and they should be moved apart at certain locations to and then to form a bike, and so on and so forth. And then really interesting as well, we can do this across category. So we show maybe for glasses, a sketch of glasses, then we can invert that to resemble cameras, for example, which is very exciting. And then we have some photo-based pre-training for Sketch. So this is quite interesting as well. So now the problem with Sketch is Sketch data is very coarse, yes? So we don't have, so it's very scarce, so we don't have many sketches out there. So, but then because the pre-training literature is very strong now, then we really leveraged photos for Sketch and in a proper way now. So it's not just fine-tuning. So, and then this is actually just 2 lines of code, and then you can actually just, you can get probably over 10% performance gain in terms of sketch-based image retrieval. So if you work on sketch-based image retrieval, feel free to try that. And then there's lots of work, so I wouldn't go for detail because I think we're running out of time. So here we have, because the drawing process, like I said, is subjective, and then, there's saliency embedded. So we show that by studying how humans draw, this is actually equivalent to building a saliency map, right? And then we show the saliency map, trained on sketches, can work, can tell you what the saliencies, what the salient regions are on images, which is great, right? Which is really the first step towards what I want to do. The long vision of the lab is how we can cultivate the drawing information to benefit images. So this one, Sketch for Object Detection, this is actually one of the 12 best paper awards this year. And I don't know why, because I think the other works better than this, but anyway. So this is combining Sketch for object detection. So the idea is how object detection is great, but then objects takes different forms, isn't it? So you think a camel is the whole body. I think camel is the head, right? You think camel is a certain pose. I think the camel is laying down, right? So our mental image of objects are different. So basically, are subjective. So how can we inject the subjectiveness into the traditional object detection pipeline? So if I draw, say, a certain pose of camel, within 1,000 camels in the scene, I want to identify that camel. Yeah, that's what we did for that work. And then there's a few other works I wouldn't talk too much about. So and then there's scene understanding for Sketch. This is cross modality, so image, sketch, and then text. And then there's fundamental models for Sketch. This is really interesting. This is using clip, and then we show actually foundation models are really powerful to understand sketches because it has the abstract semantic interpretation, isn't it? And then this data-free SBIR will show that look, you really do not need data to train SBIR anymore. This is in collaboration with Engine, who is a senior lecturer at Surrey. And then, okay, so I think in the interest of time, maybe I'll stop now. And then this is just one last slide to show those are the people who have really contributed to this line of research. And then here are the some of the papers I mentioned. Okay, Martin, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Song. This was a great summary, a great presentation, and a lot of different papers fit into a very, very tight slot, but also very understandable. We see this progression from the earliest work of your group on applying deep learning, and I think your group was one of the earliest ones to apply deep learning to sketching, all that progression to your more current work, which is very impressive. So I'm sure there are lots of questions. I will open it for questions. So let's take questions.
Can I ask one?
Sure, Ezgi.
You mentioned hand drawing somewhere and you said it's different from Sketch, but I didn't understand the difference between them.
Yeah, actually that caught my attention too. So
where? So you mean maybe that was misspoken. So hand drawings to me is the same as sketches. What I what I meant to say is edge maps are different to sketches. Yep.
But I think it was in a different context. Maybe we will go back and watch the video after the talk to find out in which context you said that. But that also caught my attention because you said something along the lines of once we can do this or once we understand this, then that also applies to hand drawings. Was that something like that, Ezgi? I think.
Yes. In the same sentence, it is used as something different than Sketch, so I couldn't understand what's the difference.
Oh, I think that was misspoken. So I think what meant by that sentence will be once we learn the information from hand drawings, which is same as sketches, then we can leverage that understanding on images.
Yeah. Right. I had a question about this puppy figure, which I really liked. If you could go back to it.
Which one? This one?
The puppy. There was a slide with a puppy.
That one, the puppy, yeah?
Yeah, the drawing. Yeah, I think this is actually very striking how when you take a photograph, you have no control over, you have some control over what detail you include in your photo, but you have very little control over it, right?
Yep.
After all, it's more of a physical process that's guided by physics and optics and recording on CCD. So it's very mechanical. Whereas in the case of sketching, you have control over what parts you include, what parts you exclude, in what style. So I think this is very striking in that sketching gives you the ability to control all these dimensions, right? And I think this also connects to your more recent work, I suppose, the recent work that does like not stylization, but fine-tuning or like fine-grained retrieval or generation. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. That's exactly that. So this is sort of like a trace of sketches we've explored a lot. So it's really that subjectiveness, isn't it? I mean, you know, in photos, the problem is in terms of retrieval, you subject all pixels into your retrieval process. And those pixels are predefined already once you've taken the photo. So, and then the idea is it's subject to the deep model to decide which bit is important, right? So obviously there's more advanced deep models that can do attentions, so on and so forth, right? But then that interpretation is not you. The thing about Sketch is we moved that interpretation to the drawing already, right? And then this interpretation is actually not in the semantic domain. So although I wrote those words down, I mean, you know, that's just for illustration, right? But that interpretation is still in the visual domain, isn't it? Which is, I think, the really cute thing about sketches. Because if you generate text using, say, image description or even sketch captioning, then that text is, you know, if a human generated, right, then that text can be very ambiguous, right? So we use different language to describe text, and then they confuse the hell out of a retrieval system, right? If I say something's pink-ish, you might think this is red. You might, you know, so on and so forth. So that might really confuse the system. So I really don't think that's the way. So in terms of fine-grained retrieval is going towards in the computer vision literature. I really think that subjectiveness, that ambiguousness, really need to be extracted to the input. And then what input can define that really, really well, I think, you know, Sketch is definitely a very strong contender.
Right.
Yeah.
Would be interesting to think about how you could use text, sketching, and photos together in ways that allow you to say create photos that emphasize certain aspects or that have a certain artistic take on it, on the content generated. I think that would be very interesting thing to look at.
Absolutely, yeah. So and then because we have, I mean, obviously some of the sketch image models we had in terms of, like you said, the fine-grained retrieval. So yes, I mean, you can imagine that's like a cross-model thing. But then lately, what I really want to do is, you know, to really explore the complementary play in a space. So other than just building a space where then, you know, the cross-model entities like the sketch and the image, they sit close to each other, right? I really want some flexibility in that space, you know, to have text, sketch, and image together, but then where every modality benefits each other. So, so that is, so in CVPR this year, we've done the work on that in terms of scene, but then it's not very good, I think. So, you know, I'm still like eager to see. But I think maybe foundation models will have maybe we can do something there. But then the thing about foundation models have too much an emphasis on text. So the semantic along the text is too strong. I think the same thing with ChatGPT, GPT-4, all of that is. I mean, I think Clip actually was a good balance between.
Yeah, actually, there's a question on Clip. So somebody sent a question through chat. Gürkan, maybe you would like to read your question or ask your question. He's having microphone issues.
Okay,
so
no
let
problem.
me try to read his question.
So foundation models, right? Why do we have clip in that? Yeah, very good idea. Yep. So very good question. I'll answer the first one first and then the second one, right?
Yeah.
So I think we just touch on foundation models, isn't it? What I said is, previously the cross-model space is like image and sketch and image. And then now we want to bring text into the equation. Obviously, we want to bring text into the equation. You touch foundation models now, right? You cannot escape foundation models now, right? But then the deeper meaning here is what I think is foundation models give you very good semantic embedding already. And you can, previously it was good, but not very good. But in this case, it's almost like it's very good and it's very accommodating. Because it's so accommodating and so good, it has that flexibility. It has that flexibility to position your sketches and then your images, right? So that everything becomes very complementary. But then the downside of that is, like I said, the text is too much, it's too salient. It plays it is too semantic a role. So how then we prompt the foundation models, to me, is the next thing going forward. So yes, we have used self-supervision before, by the way, right? But then the problem is it's just not enough data. So for sketch data, then obviously you can use edge maps and you can use even 3D models, you can use MPR techniques to get the 2D projections. But then what that's subjectiveness, Martin, that you mentioned the subjectiveness, that thing just cannot be generated. So it really has to be 2D sketches. And then the amount of styles are just too variant. The range is too big. So I think, any like self-supervised learning techniques, that's going to be hard to handle all of that. And then this is why foundation models might be, because if you think about it, it has this really good semantic, it can do abstraction, it can do, different levels as well of abstraction. If you think like that, then it's almost the same as sketches, okay? So, and then in terms of second question, I think, yes, towards sketch explainability. So self-supervision task, have you tried it? Can it be used Yes, it can be. Not tried it, but then that idea came about. And yes, so we're not expanding for that yet. So if you're interested, we can follow up on that. And it certainly is a very interesting angle. So the explainability work and the salience work are the works that really, echoing what I said at the beginning. That's what we really want to do. Sketch data, how it benefits visual understanding. The salience work is like, drawing process will show that salience in learns is cross-model, i.e. from sketches to images. And then for the explainability work is we show this level of configuration is not possible with photos, right? So how can you move a photo like different bits? Yeah, you can move patches, but then those patches are artificial, right? The thing about sketches, the strokes are inherent building block. So you can really change the location of the strokes and then see how they move and then how they can, go to the origin and then actually expand out to form, recognizable stroke sketches. Yep. Does it answer your question?
I guess Gurkan is having microphone questions, but he says
yes.
he
Yeah,
says
good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting connections there. I think the problem you mentioned, not having enough sketch data, that's I think one of the biggest challenges I think for the domain. How do you see sketching getting more mainstream? What kinds of applications can they build, killer apps maybe, to make sketching more mainstream, to be to make a connection to speech, say. Speech was not mainstream at all, and maybe it still is not mainstream in human-computer interaction, right? Siri had been around for a very long time. These devices like Echo have been around for a while as well, but it's maybe just recently starting to pick up. I mean, the technology to interpret, to recognize speech and also interpret the textual content, that has advanced a lot, but I think there is still a lot to be done in terms of the adoption of speech in HCI settings. So I think this problem of adoption is not specific to sketching. There's the same problem in speech as well, but for speech we have a lot of data. That's the difference. But on the sketching side, we will not have sufficient data until people start adopting sketching as a communication or interaction modality. So we basically need to find a way of encouraging people to sketch more.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
I think that's
a hard question.
That's a problem you and me both face, I think, Martin. So the pessimistic side of me says maybe that's probably after I die. So probably give it like maybe a good like 30, 40 years. And then the optimistic side of me says maybe there's a thing in AR and VR, because that's why we're pushing that field very hard. So I think speaking in that environment is odd. And then, you know, I don't think it's a natural one. I think you interaction with your hand and then maybe some other things that's got to be a very strong element of that. Is actually how you touch, how you move objects, you know. So then we can extend that just a little bit. Say, look, all you need to know, other than grasping things, like changing, you know, moving things, interacting with the world, you can just like sketch, like you know, so maybe when Apple releases their AR VR headset, and then when everybody has it, and then when everybody sees the pain of interacting with a virtual world, then maybe. And a few you know, examples that was given to me actually was, you know, a game company approached me saying that, look, lots of kids want to play video games and they want their own weapons or whatever. I have no idea what so they want to have their own weapons. So maybe, you know, they can just quickly sketch a weapon. I mean, not like detailed cat sketch, but really like very rough one. And then, you know, they can retrieve, they can build even your own weapon, that sort of thing. So maybe there's something in there as well. In terms of retrieval, I was very enthusiastic before, but I'm a lot less enthusiastic now, because I think the people are very accustomed to text-based and photo-based. So, you know, 2D images, I think that game is probably, you know, gone. And I think the role of sketch maybe just in very niche cases.
Yeah, I think the one key question that can help us be creative in this direction could be, what if you forbid people from sketching in their daily lives? What pain points would they have? And maybe those pain points are the use cases or they're the gateways to making sketching more mainstream. Like I sketch a lot when I try to describe things, especially things that have some spatial component to it. When I lecture, when I describe two-dimensional things, when words themselves don't suffice. So maybe sketching, the adoption of sketching in interfaces, maybe it starts with, or maybe it follows the adoption of speech. Perhaps we will first have these speech-based systems that people will start using a lot as they describe things, as they create things, as they communicate things. And then we will also give them, just like in Zoom, now we have this drawing board, right? We will give them the ability to sketch as well. And that will help us get them use sketching more, and it will also create more sketching data for us. So maybe we need applications, games, whatnot, perhaps driven through the main speech, but also have the supporting role of sketching that will in the end serve as a playground for collecting more sketch data.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yes, I think that that pain point, like where then people miss. But yeah, I think that's a very good way to look at it. Yeah. I'll give you more thinking. And if I have some good ideas, I'll let you know.
Yeah. And I think we should also perhaps pay more attention to how people really sketch, because in these pain point scenarios that I mentioned, like when you're trying to explain something to somebody, or where you're trying to maybe brainstorm or do some creative thinking, you don't necessarily create the kinds of sketches that we see in these big sketch databases. So we need to rethink sketching as well.
Yeah. You're right. So it shouldn't be only figurative, right?
Right. Because if you actually, and we've done some studies on this, we'll probably share them soon on our archive and then also send them to conferences, etc. But we've done some work on collecting sketch data from more realistic scenarios where people
very interesting,
do naturally use sketching as a supporting modality, and those sketches look really different. So maybe we should focus on those scenarios. So obviously things like retrieval or sketching in 3D in AR, VR, those are not part of our daily interaction, or we don't have such experiences at the moment. So we will not know if people will engage with those sorts of interfaces until we build them. That's why you're building them and we're building them, and a lot of other people are building them as well. But then there's this alternative, which is the existing use cases of sketching, maybe in conjunction with other modalities. They also require our attention. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm really interested in that paper you mentioned. If you finish it, and then if you can send it to me, that'll be great.
Sure, we'll do that. Okay, I see we're 5 minutes over time, so we can take maybe one final question if there are burning questions. Are there any final questions? Okay. Otherwise, I will thank Professor Song again. This was a great talk. Thank you for your time. It's always great seeing you and
likewise,
your work, and also seeing the latest work as well. Very exciting. Let's catch up.
Yes,
my final words.
Yeah, so if you can come over someday, that'll be really great.
Yeah, let's. I will take you on that invitation at some point.
Brilliant,
all right?
Brilliant.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah. Thank you again, Professor Song, and thanks everyone for joining in. Everyone have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.